Yeah, and normally I come to you in the capacity of coming on with my husband on our platform of dating a trucker. This morning I'm coming into you in the capacity as Reverend Dr. Michelle K. Taylor. And I'm doing so because I want to share something with you guys this morning about what God gave me, right? And this is the audience that was in my heart to share with. So I want to share with you about Elijah trumpets over the powers of Baal today. And I want to give you a motivation. And that motivation is that God said, stop dimming down your power. Stop pretending like you don't have power. Stop pretending like you're not called. Stop pretending like you're not the stuff. Stop pretending like you're not a bag of chips and all of that. Stop dimming your light to be accepted for people in lower places, right? And the reason I say that is because you got to know who you are in God. You got to know that you carry power. You got to know that favor triumphs over everything when it comes in your life. You got to know that you're blessed. You got to know that God has a blessing with your name on it. Well, how can you know that if you won't step up to the plate and be who God called you to be? And the reason I use this story about Elijah triumphing over the Baals is because, listen, God had to show himself strong in order for people to make up their mind on who you're going to serve. And the Bible simply says in Elijah 18, verse 21, it said, how long will you go limping with two different opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal be God, then follow him. So basically, God is saying to you, what you going to do? Whose side are you going to choose? Because we're in a time today where life is running so rampant and people are doing everything that they're big enough to do, that we have to decide that whose side will you choose? Whose side will you believe? If you believe God is God, then choose God. But if you believe that these other prophets and the Baals and the golden calves and the whoremongers and all of that be God, then you go with them. But it says you need to make a choice. Because remember, in this story, when you're reading this story, after it's all said and done, then the rain came. Come on, somebody. You got to understand what I'm saying. Then the famine stopped. So what that means, then things got better. Then the economy got better. Then God was able to step in. Then God was able to be God in the earth. But the reason why there's confusion, because people can't decide who they choose, and people won't step into their power because you're scared people saying it don't take all that. But Elijah went to Ahab and the priest and said, listen, I want you to gather all the people. I need all of you to gather, and I need you to understand that if your God be God, then tell him rain down fire from heaven. You get your calf because you're the majority. You get your calf, you cut it into pieces, you do all of that. I'm going to let you go first, and you call on your God and tell him to rain down fire on this altar, and you let me know that if your God is God. But if not, then I'm going to ask my God to do the same thing. And it says that when he chose his calf, he did the same thing. He cut it into pieces. They was on the mount. He cut it into pieces. He did that and said that when he called on his God, the fire ran down from heaven, and it smoked the wood. It smoked everything around it. It did what it was supposed to do because God is God. And then Elijah commanded, now you go get all those false prophets, all those false prophets of Baal, and you killed them. And it was so. And then God called him to go to look and say, listen, there's a small rain cloud coming. And he let him know, listen, the rain is coming. The famine is in it. And that's another story in itself. You got to read it. But I'm trying to tell you that you got to link up with God in order for God to show himself strong in your life. You got to stop running around saying God is not moving. God is not real. God is not doing that. But if you put God to the test, come on, somebody. You got to put God to the test and see that God would do what he said he would do. So these false prophets of Baal said that they ran around from morning to noonday. They ran, they called every trick in the book. They did everything they could do to get their God to rain down heaven on that altar. They began to cut themselves until they were all bloody because they was trying to get their God to move, but it showed that their God was not real. So Elijah was basically saying, we're gonna put this to an end. We're gonna put this to an end. And see, once he put it to an end, then the famine was over. But listen, you can't get the storms to stop in your life if you don't try God at his hand. You can't get God to be God in your life if you don't believe he's God. You can't get God to show himself strong and mighty if you don't stand in the place and confess that God is God in your life. You got to say, I choose God because he is God. I believe God because he is God. I trust God because he is God. I love God because he is God. See, because he's God, that's enough. He'll take care of everything in your life concerning you. But you walking around being fetal and scared and won't confess that he's God because you don't want people to know that you are who you are. But don't you know a lot of people are saved and blessed because they attached to you? You got to go ahead and say, yeah, I am the ish. I am about God. I am who God called. I am who they say I am. I have the power of God inside of me to raise the dead. I have the power of God inside of me to help the blind man see. I am God because he say I have God inside of me. The very God who sits in heaven is inside of me. So it is in heaven as it is in earth because he's given me the ability to do so. But how can you do that if you want to simmer down and say, I am not that? You worried about people saying, oh, they think they all that. You worried about people saying, oh, who they supposed to be. Well, I tell you who I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be who I am, which is a child of God. I am attached to the hair of God, the air of God. I am attached to the very God who owns heaven and earth. I am attached to that name, Jesus. Come on, somebody, which means I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. But how can you know who you are if you being feeble and weak and you won't even stand up and you letting earth to whoop the hell out of you? You letting everything in life whoop the hell out of you. You letting everything in life do what it want to do to you because you acting like you don't know who God is. Come on, somebody. But you got to understand that you are attached to the very God that owns everything in heaven and earth, can do all things but fail. So what does that mean? It means what I told you in the beginning, that a whole lot of people are saved because of who you are. A whole lot of people blessed because they attached to you. A whole lot of people here today because of your prayers. A whole lot of people here because of the things that you laid before God concerning them. You gotta go ahead and tell them you gotta make a choice. If you choose God, then come on over to this side. Because right now you riding on my blessings because of God's grace and mercy and his love towards us. Right now, but see, listen, it's gonna come a time that every knee gotta bow for himself. Every tongue gotta confess for themselves that Jesus Christ is Lord. And I can't make that confession for you. So I'm on here today to let you know that God is calling you. I can't make that confession for you. I can't speak on your behalf because my soul is my soul and your soul is your soul. So God is calling out to you to say, listen, what you gonna do? Because I've already told you that tell the people because they attached to you that some of them blessed because of the attachment. Come on, somebody. Some of them ran on a grace and a prayer. But it's time for you to choose what you gonna do. That's why I gave you this scripture today. That's why I gave this to you today so that you can understand that time is nigh and God is calling you for you to decide what you want to do. Stop dimming down your light. Somebody need to tell somebody that's attached to them, listen, you attached to my blessing because of who I am. But it's time for you to make up your mind. If you feel like God is God, then you need to choose God. If you feel like those graven images are God, then you need to go that way. Because there's a time coming that you're going to have to speak for yourself. You're going to have to answer God for yourself. And I know for a fact that God gave me this because, listen, time is nigh. Listen, and I'm not saying that your time is today and my time is tomorrow. What I'm saying is that the times that's heading hot right now, what's going on, you're going to need to choose who you're going to serve. And God has showed me here that Elijah is saying once you make a choice, come on, somebody, it won't be that you won't have to go through famine. It won't be that you won't have no more promise, but it will be that God will take care of your famine. He'll tell you which way to go. He'll tell you where to go and look in the sky. And if you don't see it, you need to hear his voice. That he told Elijah, go 3 times, go back and look again until he saw a little cloud that let him know that rain is on the way. Come on, somebody. All you need is a little word from God. All you need is a word from God to let somebody know that God is on your side, that God hears you, that God knows that what you're going through, your ins and outs, and that he hears your prayers. But you got to make up your mind. You got to choose who you going to serve this day. You got to choose who your God is. You got to make up in your mind that you're going to go one way or another, because listen, you got to have God on your side. You got to have a God that's going to be able to put the fire out when the flames are roaring in your life. You got to have a God that's going to be able to light a fire to things that seem stagnant and dead in your life. You're going to need a God with power. You understand what I'm saying? So listen, this is Dr. Michelle. And like I said, this was for this platform today. And I wanted to come on and let you know that not only is God is real, but God is calling you. And God can use anybody. Some of you may not know me in this capacity, but God is calling you. And God will use who he want to use to reach you. Even those truckers that my platform is built up around. And for those, what will you wear today? Those platforms, God has a way of reaching who he needs to reach, how he want to reach, and at the time that you need to be reached. So this is Dr. Michelle. You guys be blessed. Have an amazing day and jump back on anytime. Follow us. Follow my platform. I promise you'll be blessed. Not only because you get attached to somebody who's attached to God, but because life is just built that way. You know, you can't help but see the blessings of God. And I'm going to share more and more about my life and my testimony as time goes on. But go ahead and subscribe to that button so that you won't go wrong. This is Dr. Michelle. You all have a good one. Peace.